goes without saying that the current political climate is growing ever strained and polarized. People blame things from social media to fake news to diverging political figures, and really the most common theory is that it's a concoction of all these three things. Millennials and Zoomers are attempting to navigate a socio-political climate that has no survival guide. So while background and cultural upbringing are important parts of the way people create their political views, so are influencing voices, which can range from libertarian, progressive, conservative. The list is endless, and it can be overwhelming for a lot of people to process. For a combined 449,000 people, one of these key voices is 29-year-old Turkish American Hasan Piker, or also commonly known as HasanAbi. This political science and communications graduate streams every day on Twitch, commentating on politics and playing video games. He's one of the top creators on the site. Just to give you an idea of the scope of his influence, during the first 2020 presidential debate, Hasan's streaming of the event was the highest viewership count on Twitch to date. I got on Twitch because I knew that this is a young audience, mostly male, probably prone to reactionary politics, but their political idols are a bunch of idiots. All the takes that they've heard about, like leftist politics, have been just straw men from the likes of Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro. He has self-identified under a conglomeration of leftist, socialist, and progressive ideologies. Openly critical to both the Democratic and Republican Party, he supports workplace democracy, Medicare for all, gender-inclusive feminism, gay and trans rights, gun control, advocacy against war, the Green New Deal, advocating for Islamophobia, awareness, and prevention. The topics are really countless depending on what current events are happening at the time. Everywhere you went on the internet, the left was seen as hysterical, emotional, blue-haired social justice warriors. They turned the concept of fighting for social justice into something negative. That's crazy to me. The thing is, those people have a righteous cause. They have the right to be emotional and frustrated, but unfortunately the right has been able to create a very successful narrative. Hasan's appeal comes from a perfect recipe of 4 different things. He's satirical and dynamic in presentation, accessibility through Twitch streaming, despite Twitch's history of pushback of political commentary on their platform. His rapid-fire consumption of cross-platform information, from reacting to social media posts, commenting on news sources, all while bantering with his live chat in the hangout-esque setting of his bedroom. Some claim his attractiveness contributes to. He has been called woke bae in the past, and he absolutely hates it. People came to me because they wanted to hear a point of view, and maybe not a manicured point of view either, but an honest point of view. A YouTube audience may be familiar with Hasan because of his infamous running in with conservative media due to his controversial take on the US's involvement in Saudi Arabia prior to 9/11. For now, let's just take this as proof, as sometimes Hasan's unfiltered, provocative approach sometimes backfires. So that's great and all. A Twitch streamer talking about politics. Good for him. Why does it matter? Well, Hasan obviously has an audience that is engaged, so what he broadcasts has an impact on his viewers. One stance that Hasan touches on intermittently during his streams is his aversion for the Republican Party and conservatism as a whole. The Republican strategy? If you're a corrupt, unlikable, out-of-touch, robotic, multimillionaire elitist, just crank up the dial of racism, shoot some guns, claim you love God, wear a hunting vest, defend Donald Trump no matter how silly he is, and these hogs will vote for you. Yo, we literally treat Republicans like they're babies, celebrating every tiny thing they do, no matter how many tantrums they threw along the way. Americans think millionaire oil barons in Texas are more working class than Latina bartenders in New York, as they think black reverends from MLK Church are less Christian than Trump. At some point, we gotta stop letting Republicans define these values and running along with their framing. Argued that these takes are over-exaggerated for comedic effect. The sentiment is still loud and clear. Hasan does not tolerate the ideologies pushed by a conservative mindset. I'll come up front and say it. I am a fan of Hasan, so I know that makes me biased on this topic. I share similar socio-political views with him, and I can't speak for the entirety of his audience, but for me, I find that Hasan is a mouthpiece for some of my more unfiltered political sentiments that I typically don't have the guts to voice. Feelings and thoughts that I am not really qualified or articulate enough to express. Hasan is right there to provide the words of my inner frustration and socio-political concerns. The unapologetic and confident manner certainly helps validate those sentiments for me. So when I hear Hasan say things like, my initial reaction is not to agree. I've naturally been taught not to take black and white stances on the other side of the aisle. My instinct is to naturally push back on sweeping generalizations. I don't want to completely write off conservatism or a whole party because, well, isn't giving into my distrust for conservatism going to further contribute to the polarizing political climate? The more I watched Hasan, the more I slowly started to notice myself reevaluate the tolerance I had for conservatives, and there was a tension within my political beliefs. I began to rationalize the temptation to be intolerant toward conservative viewpoints, as I started viewing them as inherently oppressive. Their tendency to favor big business over the interest of American people, and their dismissal of marginalized population had always left a bad taste in my mouth. Truly, these thoughts had been silently brewing in the back of my mind for a while now, but I had hid these internalizations even to myself. And now with Hasan voicing my true feelings, plain and simple, right on a live stream, I was unable to hide my own bias when it was being unmasked so blatantly for me. This topic may seem silly to someone who is not in the transitionary stage between centrist and progressive, but I know I'm not the only Zoomer or millennial who was raised in a conservative household and have found themselves slowly leaning left as they continue to grow up. And for all of us, it means that we have to reframe what conservatism means to us. And I know that I'm not the only one at the precipice of abandoning tolerance for conservative police altogether. So I want to tackle these concerns with these certain people today, the ones who may find this topic hitting especially home for them. Are right-wing ideologies so truly oppressive that I should finally put my foot down and embrace a vocal intolerance toward conservatism altogether? Or by listening to voices like Hasan Piker, am I just victim to a leftist brand of mob mentality? Is what this Hasan guy says even worth looking into? If it's just a result of bandwagoning, safe to say, he loses a lot of credibility. It makes me think of the sociological term called groupthink. This is the psychological phenomenon that occurs when a group of people, in which the desire for harmony or conformity in the group results in an irrational or dysfunctional decision-making outcome. We can typically spot groupthink by the presence of a persuasive, charismatic leader, high level of group cohesion, and intense external pressure to make good decisions. Some of the common symptoms are peer pressure, moral high ground, censorship, and illusion of unanimity. Whatever. Strong persuasive leader? To some, yes. High level of group cohesion. Take one look in Hasan's live chat and no, it's literally the complete opposite. The very nature of a Twitch chat completely destroys any attempt at illusion of unanimity. And trying to get around the default censorship of a Twitch chat is an extreme sport for many viewers. If Hasan was going to try and delete messages in real time, he'd have to clone himself nearly 10 times over. And Hasan will purposefully respond to people who come to debate and debunk his chat. If there is any peer pressure, that would come from it naturally and organically occurring in the chat. But I could see where one would argue that Hasan's straightforward approach could encourage a chat to follow suit. But oftentimes, this candor seems to have the opposite effect. His willingness to dish out insultainment alongside political insight seems to attract people willing to hop into the intellectual ring with Hasan and duke it out. If anything, Hasan naturally engages in the recommended amenities for solving groupthink. He gathers information from many types of sources and engages purposefully with people who oppose his claims. It only bolsters his arguments and makes him look more credible. A guy like Hasan has a background in political science, and the wits about him to take in information while formulating debates at the same time. Claims that something as common as conservatism is evil or wrong, I want to look more into it. I want to learn more about it. And with that, let's dissect the very thing we've been dancing around. While there are different factions of conservatism, for the sake of this video, we're going to boil it down to this definition: the holding of political views that favor free enterprise, private ownership, and traditional ideas. A lot of conservatives consider themselves realists, subscribing to what they believe is a consistent moral order, openly skeptic about abstract reasonings. Conservative mindset sees the world in sort of a if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of mentality, viewing tradition as tried and true, and therefore having a reputation from the other side as being resistant to change. Conservatism has a parental mindset, often appealing to authority and seeing it in conjunction with harmony. Okay, but really, when people actually call themselves conservative, I already may have a basic idea of what they might support. And then applying what I know of the Republican Party, I would predict that they likely support this. And this is a classical profile about how most people perceive the right. So on these issues, which can I be tolerant or intolerant to? If I can be tolerant, then I can be morally flexible. But I can't tolerate anything that infringes on people's rights or harms them. The right to bear arms. One could easily argue, because of the violence and loss of lives that gun ownership has caused, whether one leans more gun control or no guns at all. I would claim it's a dangerous stance to protect this right over the concerns of human lives. Traditional marriage. No matter one's religious beliefs, gay people have a right to marriage just as much as heterosexual people do. So no, I cannot be tolerant of enforcing this on a legislative level. I could even say on a social level, it's hard to tolerate people still saying being gay isn't a sin, acting on it is. It normalizes homophobia. The complexities past these statements could constitute a whole video on its own. Strict on immigration policy. Reforming and streamlining the process of immigration and citizenship is necessary. If anything, these mindsets have led to the separation of families at the border. Therefore, I cannot be tolerant. Supporting armed forces and police. Supporting law enforcement in the current system has proven to be corrupt and oppressive. And while the U.S. military protects us, it is also used to protect the interest of big business, in many cases squandering the interest of innocent citizens on American soil and off. Skeptical of transgenderism. No, this is straight up transphobic. This is 2021. There's science to back this up. Religious beliefs aside, allowing these biases to affect the safety of trans people in government and socially is 100% intolerable. Privatized healthcare. In a first world country with the capacity to meet the needs of their citizens, healthcare should not be something that people have to question that they have access to. People die from not being able to afford healthcare every day in this country. I cannot be morally tolerant of anything that bars people of access to their well-being. Looks into the interest of big business. Big business is oftentimes oppressing the people it uses. On an economic and social level, I cannot be tolerant to that. Environmentally neutral or skeptical of climate change. The environment is 100% important to protect. If we continue down this path, our Earth will die, and in turn us. I cannot be morally okay with its denial or neutrality on this matter. So what's the common ground here? I would argue that generally conservatism, when broken down into its broad ideologies, seeks to preserve certain values and institutions, are upholding systems that hurt the middle class, all the way down to vulnerable populations, which according to my moral compass is not something I'm willing to be open-minded or tolerant to. Alright, I'm throwing conservatism into the chasm that further polarizes me from a big group of Americans. Oh shit. Spoiler alert, no. If we decide to reject conservatism, then polarization is unavoidable. Because in America, we see things in a bipartisan lens, left and right, liberal, conservative. If I'm claiming that I'm going to be intolerant to the right, I'm contributing to that polarization. No getting around it. But cutting off an ideology that I've determined to be oppressive and harmful, then you know what? Screw it. For example, let's get the homophobes as polarized and away from the LGBT community as possible. I'll support that. To be honest, in America, we're on just a skewed version of the political compass. On a global scale, people like Bernie Sanders are moderate left, and in America, he's super spooky socialists. When we start to get an international bird's eye view, the American political scale is mega tilted. I'm not saying that this injustice justifies screaming at conservatives, insulting them, belittling them, disrespecting them. Respectfully hold our fellow human beings accountable, educating them, showing them the harmful reality of these right-winged mindsets. Well, you've made it this far in the video. Thank you. I made this video for people like me, just another unqualified voice, a sea of squabbling, rambling idiots on the internet. All I can say is thank you for listening, and that I'm grateful to people like Hassan Piker and others who are normalizing the pushback of oppressive, harmful mindsets that have hid under the guise of a political stance for centuries that now have no room in politics. You, Hassan, have got plenty of goofballs and knuckleheads, and all I can say is good luck to you. Sometimes they're a silent kid in the back of the classroom, taking it all in and quietly changing our minds because of people like you. And I'm gonna end it on one more quote from Hassan. The thing is that they don't have a lot of access to proper leftist representation. When someone comes in and is like, oh no, both parties are pretty bad, and here's what we should be doing like the rest of the world, and this is why it's wrong, they're like, oh, this is a little different from what I expected the left to be like. Thank you for watching. I hope you know that was all recorded.
No, that's why I did it. We need to make blooper reels and then make a separate channel.
Maybe I'll put it at the end of the video.
Bet.